it was December 2022. I went in for my annual checkup with my OBGYN, and she found a lump in my left breast. And that kind of started everything.
That was Joyelle. As you heard, she was diagnosed with cancer, and as she said, that's when everything started. And by everything, she meant the initial shock, the doctor's visits, the cancer treatment, but she also meant fertility preservation. Because over time, we, humans, have gotten really good at treating cancer. So good that a cancer diagnosis, in many cases, doesn't have to be an end. And so, as people fight cancer, they need to do so with an eye on the future. Today, Joyelle is going to share her story with us. We're going to learn how she managed her cancer treatment, and we're going to hear how she utilized embryo freezing to preserve her future fertility. I'm Dan Bolger, and this is Infertility. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of This is Infertility, where we share people's personal experiences with fertility and family building. Before we dive in, I just want to take a second to remind you that we have some resources available for anyone who might want to bring fertility and family benefits to their employer at progyny.com/talktohr. Most employers that offer these benefits do so because an employee asked for it. So take advantage of our resources and help bring this life-changing benefit to your employer. All right, let's dive right in here where we left off at the open.
I had to go get a lot of mammograms, a lot of ultrasounds, a lot of biopsies, and it came back with I had stage 2 triple positive breast cancer. And I've been dealing with that all year. I've done 6 rounds of chemo, had a double mastectomy. Right now, I'm in my second round of infusions, and I'll have 14 of those total. So hopefully we'll be done by June 2023. I have an upcoming, they have to put my breast implants in. So I have that surgery in January 2024. And yeah, that's been a lot. That was definitely out of left field and really shocking. I did genetic testing. I don't have any breast cancer genes. So it's just my body decided to do this to me, which is difficult to process, but I'm hanging in there.
She was just 31 years old, and the moment she got the call with her diagnosis is one that she'll likely never forget.
When I got the call, I was on the way to get my license renewed. I live in Illinois now, but I'm from Houston, so I had to get an Illinois driver's license, and got the call, was like, okay, but knew I had to take a picture for my driver's license. And I was meeting my husband there too. And I was just kind of like, okay, we're going to go through the license process. And once we were done, I told him, he was like, why didn't you tell me earlier? And I was like, I didn't want to look like I'd been crying in my driver's license photo. So needless to say, I think at first I was kind of numb and had a little okay, whatever. And then once reality hit in, there's a lot of crying. There's kind of I don't know if I can curse on this, but it was like an oh shit moment. And it was really hard telling my parents about it. And then I had them kind of tell the news to the rest of my family because I was like, I can't tell everyone all the time. I have a pretty large family. So I was like, I don't want to tell everyone if I don't have to. And then when I kind of got over the initial shock and grief, I was like, okay, what are we doing? What are the next steps? Let's get treatment started. And probably the biggest thing that I was concerned about, my husband and I were supposed to have our wedding this year in June. And I was like, how does this diagnosis impact the bachelorette, the wedding, all of the fun stuff associated with the wedding? We ended up pushing our wedding to 2024, but we got legally married this year because we're going to get married anyway. No need to push the legal part of it.
The first priority for Joyelle and for her doctor was, of course, beating cancer. But she and her doctor also knew that it was important to protect her future fertility. Some cancer treatments can cause fertility challenges down the road, so a great option for young people who are about to go through treatment is to freeze eggs, embryos, or sperm prior to treatment. Knowing of her future goals to have kids meant that there was no time to waste, so they started an egg retrieval cycle basically right away.
I got diagnosed, or the official call, like January 20th, and then I started like hormone treatments mid-February. So it was sometime in that month period with my doctors when they're like, well, are you interested in having kids? If you do want to have kids, it's probably good to freeze your eggs or embryos just because we're unsure how the treatment will impact my fertility. And I was just like, sure, like I would love to have that option. / there was so much else going on that I was like, that's an easy yes, because like we don't want kids right now, but we want them in the future. So this could be a future me problem if we have embryos to use. And I was also selfishly like, I got to focus on myself before thinking about having offspring. So like, cool, that's great. Like, what is my treatment plan? What do I need to do to help me be healthy now?
For Joyelle, the fertility preservation part of this journey felt more like an automatic step in her treatment than a big decision that she had to make. And that is great to hear. I recall 7 years ago, we made a series of episodes of This is Infertility all about oncofertilty. And the conversation was around building awareness with oncologists and young cancer patients so that more people know about these options. Now, it sounds like Joyelle's experience was fairly automatic. The doctor brought it up to her, she thought it was a good idea, and she moved ahead so that she could focus instead on her cancer treatment without having to worry about fertility.
Yeah, I really appreciated my doctor because the first time we went in, she laid everything out to me and like what the process would be, and also talking about the I call it the numbers game, because when you have so many follicles, but then they have to harvest the egg. Oh, harvest sounds weird, but they have to collect the eggs. And then if you're freezing eggs, and like that's the amount you have, but my husband and I chose to freeze embryos. So then it's you harvest the eggs, and then it's how many are mature, and then it's how many end up getting fertilized. And then we did genetic testing on them. And so then we only ended up with 3 embryos, but they collected 19 eggs. So it was nice to know just the percentage drops at each stage, because I think I would have been, it was just nice to have kind of be realistic. But it also made me nervous because this was really my one shot at doing this. So I was like, hopefully the odds are good in our favor that we end up with some embryos and not none.
Egg freezing is a process that takes a few weeks, and while a few weeks is not something that most of us think too much about, for someone who is just diagnosed with cancer, a 2 to 4 week delay in cancer treatment might be a bit scary. We always hear that cancer treatment works better when it's caught early. So would a month-long delay disrupt things?
I think part of the reason why my timeline between getting diagnosed and having the hormone treatments was so short was because my oncologist was like, we need to start as soon as possible. We can give you like a month leeway to do fertility treatments, but like at the latest, you need to be starting by March. So we kind of just jumped in, and I was like, this is fine. This will work. Again, like I want to focus on me, but I can, if the doctors are saying it's okay for me to take like not an extended period, but these 2 weeks to go through treatment, go through the retrieval, let's do it. And then I can just focus on me.
In this show, we share people's stories as they try to build their families. And we're always reminding you that the experience our guest has might not line up exactly with your own experience. And it's always best to talk to your physician about anything related to your own personal medical experience. And that's extremely true when speaking about oncofertility too. Joyelle's doctor determined that it would be okay to wait a few weeks before starting treatment, but other doctors for other patients might not see that time as a good idea. So if you or someone you know is in this position, please keep that in mind. The oncologists who help us out there are amazing at what they do, and we really need to listen to their guidance. So Joyelle was clear for fertility preservation, but she was on a very tight timeline. Anyone out there who's needed IVF can probably tell you that it can take some time to get into a clinic and get treatment started. Fortunately, most fertility clinics are prepared to assist patients quickly when they are coming in for oncofertility purposes. Joyelle also has access to the Progyny benefit through her employer, Genentech.
I used the patient care advocate to find someone that was available in Chicago in like a week to meet them, and found my fertility doctor that way. And then started kicking off the process when I was getting hormones and everything, and would call them a lot just with questions and to make sure I had all of the injections that I needed. Because with the shipping times and weekends, I was like, sometimes on Thursday, Friday, I'd be like, I think I might need this, but the doctor hasn't said when I'm getting my trigger shot, but like, can I get more of, and of course I'm going to forget the name of the meds that I was on, but can I just get more to hold me over to the weekend, and then I'll see the doctor Monday, and then we'll know a better sense of when my retrieval will be.
In order to freeze eggs or embryos, patients have to go through the first half of IVF, where they take injectable medications at home to increase the number of eggs that will be available during an egg retrieval.
Yeah, I was definitely scared because I've never had to inject myself before. So I was like, knowing I had 2 injections per day for 2 weeks, I was kind of like, I'm not looking forward to this. And I did have my husband help me out with the first few days, but then he went out of town, and I was like, okay, Joyelle, you have to do it yourself. And when I started doing myself, I realized it wasn't that bad. Um, I think I was just kind of psyching myself out for it. But I would say the 2 weeks that I was on hormones was just very intense because I was at the doctor basically every other day getting blood work done. And it's just the time it takes to like go to the doctor, park your car, get the blood work, and leave. It was like, okay, like I would love to not be doing this every other day, but I'm glad it was just for like a 2 week period. And it was kind of cool to see on the ultrasounds, like my ovaries, because I'd never really seen them before, and having the tech point out like, okay, well, these are follicles, and like these are growing, these aren't. So it was kind of fun for that like science-y viewpoint. And then the retrieval itself like went pretty smoothly. I've only had one experience with it, but again, no complaints. I think it was just hard on the car ride home because I was just sore and roads are bumpy. So it's just like that was a little bit of discomfort, but it was a fast, intense 2 weeks, but I'm glad it was only 2 weeks.
Joyelle and her husband decided to go ahead and fertilize the eggs from the retrieval, and as you heard, they ended up with 3 chromosomally normal embryos.
Yeah, it feels great. Like I'm not concerned about having kids with my husband in the future, which is great because I have enough things to worry about at this time. So just knowing that's like we have it, we can try naturally if we want to, but if we don't, we can just use the embryos, and it'll be not easy, but it seems more straightforward. And again, it's just one less thing to be worried about.
That peace of mind is a big reason why oncofertility is so important. As she said, she has enough to worry about, so not having to worry about having kids in the future is a really great relief. But it's important to note that not all cancer treatment will cause infertility. There's still a chance that Joyelle and her husband could have a baby via intercourse down the line.
My oncologist said I might still be fertile, and we're taking efforts to maintain my fertility. I'm on Lupron, which is an injection to help shut down your ovaries so it kind of goes dormant and helps protect them from all the infusions and everything that you're getting. So I still might be fertile in the future, but I may not. And if I'm not, we have our embryos.
Cancer is scary. It's a scary word, I think, for all of us. And for anyone who's received a diagnosis, it's literally life-changing. Fortunately, Joyelle didn't have to go through it alone.
I have a few support groups that I've used. The first one is Emmerman's Angels. I have like a buddy, and she's also a young Black woman who had breast cancer. So we'll just like text, and I text her a lot with any questions I have, and that's been great. Then there's also the Breasties app, which just has different channels. And I believe the Breasties is for breast and gynecological cancer. And that's been nice just to read people's posts and also just ask questions. It was also helpful before my double mastectomy to see what are things that were helpful for people and what were things that they thought they needed and end up not needing. And then there's also Touch, which is the Black Breast Cancer Alliance. And it's been helpful. They have newsletters that they send out, and they do events with different doctors and whatnot to just talk about breast cancer for Black women. And I found those 3 groups have been really helpful just to connect with other women who have been where I am or are actively going through it. And then I really relied on my friends, my husband, my family. And it was also great because through those connections to Touch and Breasties and Ammerman's Angels, I found more resources that help from a financial perspective. So I did cold capping during chemo, and cold capping can be a couple grand. And I was able to get that covered through a group called Hair and Hope in Chicago. So they covered my cold capping, which was great because I was definitely concerned with losing my hair, and I didn't, which is really nice.
Cold capping is a treatment that can help prevent hair loss during chemo by cooling the scalp. I've heard a lot of great things about cold capping, so it's really good to hear that there are resources out there to help people pay for it. We asked Joyelle if she had any advice for anyone listening who might be going through something similar.
The thing that's been helpful for me is asking for help and looking for resources and just letting people that I know around me, let them know what's going on, because I knew I wouldn't be able to show up the same way as I was. And just knowing people have my back, that's been great. My friends have been so supportive, and it's also helped me being open, just celebrating the wins. I threw myself an end of chemo party, and that was that was so fun. And just knowing I can have these celebratory moments throughout all of this is great. And then my PSA, which I've also been telling my friends, because I'm 32. I was 31 when I got diagnosed. I wasn't doing self breast exams because that was never anything that I was told to do. So just go get your annual checkup, because my annual checkup last year really just kind of changed the course of this year. And I know had I put it off, I would have been diagnosed later, and I might have not have had as good of outcomes as I've had so far. So it's just ask for help and find the support you need and go get your annual checkup.
Yes, I think that's a great way to wrap it up. We all need to get our annual checkups. Men, this includes us too. Modern medicine is truly remarkable, and we have treatments for things that we never had treatments for before. But none of that matters if we don't go to our checkups. So let's take advantage of the resources that we do have, and let's all take care of ourselves. And with that, I want to thank Joyelle for sharing her experience with us here today. And I want to thank you for listening. Remember, the purpose of stories like this is not to give you a blueprint on how you can build your family, but rather to give you comfort in knowing that you really aren't alone in this journey. There are a lot of people who are going through their own journeys, and while not all endings are the same, we hope you can take some comfort in knowing that there are options out there for support. Thank you for joining us today. If you want to connect with us, you can do so on Instagram at This Is Infertility Podcast. If you want to follow Progyny, you can do that at Progyny Inc. Of course, if you're listening on a podcast app, please leave a rating and review. This is Infertility is brought to you by Progyny. Please remember this podcast is not intended to substitute for the personalized expert advice of your physician. I'm Dan Bolger, and this is Infertility.